The question that we want to look at today is, who started Islam? Or when was Islam started? Now, one popular belief about Islam is that it was started in the 7th century by the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him. However, in the Muslim belief, that is not the case. Islam as a religion, according to Muslim belief, was started by God Himself, and the first person to actually follow Islam was the first human being, Adam. And all the prophets that were sent throughout history, whether it's Moses, whether it's Abraham, whether it's Solomon, whether it's David, whether it's Jesus, and Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon them all, they were all Muslims. So why do the Muslims believe this, and what is the reasoning behind that? So let's take a look at some of this. Now, to understand why Muslims believe that all prophets follow Islam, let's first take a look at the basic meaning of Islam itself. Now, Islam is derived from the root word in Arabic, salama, which means peace, purity, submission, and obedience. So in the religious sense, the one who follows Islam is the one who submits himself or herself to the will of God and follows His law. So the one who follows Islam does this, and that's what the prophets did, right? All the prophets that God sent, whether it's Moses, Abraham, Jesus, and so on and so forth, they were people who submitted themselves to God and His law. In other words, they were Muslim. So based on the definition of what it means to be a Muslim, all of the prophets throughout time were Muslim. Not necessarily that they were called by the Arabic word Muslim, but they were people who submitted themselves to the will of God, right, and then lived their lives accordingly. So in that sense, all the prophets throughout history were Muslim. In addition to this, they all preached the same basic message of Islam. And what is that message? It's very simple. It's the message of what's called Tawheed, or pure monotheism, right? That you worship God, and you worship God alone, and then you have faith in Him alone, and then you live your life according to that faith. And how do you know what God expects from you? Right? How do you know, once you have that belief, how do you know what He expects from you? That was communicated by God through the various prophets that He sent throughout time. So He sent Moses with the Torah, for example, Jesus with the gospel, and then finally, the final prophet, Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, He sent him with the Quran. Now, each of the specific prophets, they brought a certain law for their people, for a specific time, having certain requirements that needed to be fulfilled by the law that they brought. However, the belief is the same, as I mentioned. The essential basic message of pure monotheism is the same and was preached by all prophets. Now, the law, it could have changed from one prophet to the other based on the human conditions and based on the human time. But in the Muslims' belief, the divine law that God gave to the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, is the law that abrogates all laws before it and is a law that is valid till the end of time, till the end of human existence. In other words, it's the final law of God, valid for all times, until the end of time, till the day of judgment. That is the belief of the Muslim. So, I explained the meaning of Islam, or submission and obedience to God's law, and what is the message of Islam. So you can see the basis for the reasoning of why Muslims say that all prophets were Muslims, and they all preach Islam. Because submission to the will of God, or Islam, is really the only religion that is acceptable in the sight of God, is submission to His will and obedience to His law. And that's why Islam is known as the natural religion, right? And the same eternal message that was preached by all the prophets. So if Islam is submission to the will of God, and all the prophets were Muslims and they preached Islam, why do we see a difference, for example, between what Islam is today and Christianity, for example, and Judaism? Because, as I mentioned, God gave Moses the Torah, He gave Jesus the gospel, right? But is that the gospel, for example, according to Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, or is it the gospel of Jesus that we're talking about? Right? What exactly are we talking about? Well, in the Muslim belief, it would not be the gospel according to Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. That the original teachings of Jesus, right, over time were diluted and they were corrupted and watered down over time. So what we have today is not a complete and accurate picture of who Jesus was. Because the essential message of pure monotheism was the same. So no prophet came and said that God is three or that they are God, right? And you can look through even the Old and New Testament of the Bible itself. Even today, there's no place where Jesus himself says, "I am God and worship me." Right? You can't find it in there even. And even by the testimony of Christian scholars, of a lot of Christian scholars, even the Gospels that we have, the four Gospels as part of the New Testament, are not a complete and accurate picture of Jesus. So the Muslim belief about that is that Jesus was not God, that he was not one in three or three in one, but he sent Jesus to teach human beings about God and his law and to submit to him. This is the essential teaching of Jesus and all of the prophets. So his original teachings over time, they were diluted, they were corrupted, and people were entrusted to take care of that. But for the Quran and the Muslim belief, God is the one who is protecting the revelation. He's the one who is taking care of that. So it will never be corrupted till the end of time, and even after that. So just to very briefly summarize what I talked about in this session, Islam means submission to the will of God in obedience to his law. As I mentioned the reasoning as to why Muslims believe that all of the prophets were Muslim, and they all preach the same message of Islam. And Islam as a religion was not started by the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him. Rather, it was the original religion of the first human being, Adam. It was started by God and then practiced throughout history by all the prophets. So all of them, they preached Islam, and all of them were people who submitted to God and obeyed his law. In other words, they were all Muslim. I hope I was helpful in answering the question of when did Islam start. Please join me next time when we talk about another one of those frequently asked questions about Islam and give our answer with respect to it. Thank you and goodbye.